So with the Bears being on a bye, mercifully, thankfully, it allowed me to be able to check out other games and other teams that I might not have been able to do. So kind of enjoyed Week 11 a little bit. So let's take a look back at that week that was. I'm going to start off on Thursday night. Seattle's defense actually kind of sort of showed up a little bit in prime time. Still not great, but they got some revenge, avenging the overtime loss to the Cardinals early on in the year. They hold off Arizona on Thursday night, 28-21. How about that? Switching over to Sunday, the Browns defense took charge again kind of early. Talking about interception return for touchdown, safety, tough day for Carson Wentz. They did enough to hold off the Eagles 22-17, and all of a sudden, here come the Brownies. Taysom Hill didn't suck. He wasn't great, but he didn't suck. And his 2 rushing touchdowns helped lead the Saints over the Falcons 24-9. Washington got 13 unanswered points in the second half. Combined with the devastating injury to Joe Burrow, helping lead them past the Bengals 20-9. Derrick Henry ends up going the distance in OT, helps the Titans complete their comeback to beat the Ravens 30-24. The Panthers defense pounded the Lions kitty and cream pied all up in that stuff and shut them out big, 20-0. Ooh, baby. Surprise, surprise, the Steelers faced a bad team on the road, and they handled their business. Maybe the Steelers team is pretty legit. Because years past, they certainly wouldn't have done that. They made sure they handled the Jaguars relatively well, beating them easily 27-3. Deshaun Watson has a big day, helping the Texans to be able to slide past the New England Patriots 27-20. Was to a time until it wasn't because he found the pine. He got benched by Brian Flores. Fitzmagic tried to come in, but it wasn't enough. Broncos end up holding off the Dolphins 20-13. Justin Herbert, Jesus criminally, this kid's something else. 366 yards and 3 touchdowns. Chargers do enough to hold off the Jets 34-28. Rodrigo Blankenship kicks a 39-yard field goal in overtime, helping to stake the Colts to an impressive 34-31 victory in overtime over the Green Bay Packers. Andy Dalton tosses a 2-yard touchdown pass to Dalton Schultz with 1:37 left, which helps them hold off the Minnesota Vikings in that late Sunday afternoon game, 31-28. As Minnesota go from beating the Bears in primetime Monday night, ending that Cousins streak, and then they get to host the Cowboys and they lose to Dallas. That's just bad. The Sunday night game, man, this was a hell of a matchup. Patrick Mahomes to Travis Kelce late, 28 seconds left, helped the Chiefs come back and beat the Raiders 35-31. But the Raiders really showed well for themselves, and they played these Chiefs incredibly well. That's got to build some confidence even in a loss for them. And then the game that just happened last night, Monday night, Matt Gay kicked a 40-yard field goal with 2:37 left. Tom Brady had a rough night, and the Rams had enough to hold off the Bucs 27-24. So an interesting slate of games. So you look at some of the winners from the week. I go to Seattle Seahawks. That NFC West is an absolute dogfight. Seattle being in a position to avenge their earlier season loss to the Cardinals. They got it done here. And to have their defense show up a little bit. The NFC is wide open because I don't know if any of those teams at the top you truly completely trust. But any of those top few teams at the top of the NFC could be a team that you potentially see hoisting the Lombardi Trophy at the end of the year. Look at the Seahawks. That was a big, big quality, nice win for that team. The Indianapolis Colts, speaking of quality wins, be able to have Green Bay come in and you find a way to get it done. You come back and beat them in overtime. Those are confidence-building wins. Those are wins that good teams need to get, and they found a way to get it done. And then I look at the Las Vegas Raiders. And you're going to say, how are they winners when they lost? Man, this is a team that beat the Chiefs early in the year and did it in relatively impressive fashion. And then on Sunday night, they were back and forth with the Chiefs all game long. They were able to stay in a shootout with them. Not a lot of teams could do that. The Raiders were able to do that. And sure, while they did not win the game, you're now talking about a team that's squarely in the playoff race, has played the defending Super Bowl champions really tough and beaten them once and damn near could have beaten them a second time. I mean, they were less than 30 seconds away from beating them this time in a blown coverage late. If that doesn't happen, they might have beaten the Chiefs. So sometimes you can take a stock in a loss feeling almost as good as a win. I see this sometimes in wrestling, where you book somebody to lose, but you do it in such a way that it helps them so much that it really makes them. And it's just every bit as valuable or as important as a win. And I look at the Raiders here, and I think that's kind of the case. Like, they're winners for how tough they played the Chiefs, because this shows that they could potentially be a tough out in the playoffs. It certainly establishes that they should be a playoff team in the AFC, although that race is going to be a bit of a dogfight through the end of the year. When you look at some of the losers, you got to look at the Cincinnati Bengals. And for no other reason, you lose Joe Burrow to that devastating lower leg injury. Here's the kid that you were supposed to be the face of the franchise. Here's the kid that you would put all of your future hopes on. Here's the kid that was your starter since game one, and now he's out for the rest of the year, and you don't know what exactly the future holds with him. So, for a Bengals team that maybe thought that their trajectory was starting to look a little up, now all of a sudden it's due to no fault of their own. It's just, it happens. Like, that's the game. That's the way it goes sometimes, unfortunately. Like, now if you're the Bengals, you go and you've got to finish out the rest of the season without the guy that brought you some hope. Now you got to sit there and figure out, what does the future hold? Like, is Joe Burrow even going to be able to be Joe Burrow in the future with that type of leg injury? Because it was definitely a significant one. Especially for a guy with limited arm tools who needed that mobility to really be able to survive and play to his maximum potential. What happens if that saps any ability to move at all? It's just really tragic, a really unfortunate injury for the Bengals. You look at the Baltimore Ravens. They really needed to win that game against the Titans. And now, as we stand right now after Week 11, the Ravens are technically on the outside looking in an expanded AFC playoff picture. Like, that was not a good loss for them. And their offense isn't the same. Their defense isn't playing the same. Like, nothing is the same right now. They just are not the same team as last year. They have just not pieced it together, just have not figured it out. And then I got to go to the Minnesota Vikings. Like, if you're Minnesota, you've invested a lot of money in Kirk Cousins, so you're not in tank mode. You started off the season kind of sluggish, but you beat the Bears on Monday night. All of a sudden, you're sitting there 4-5, and you're saying, okay, you know what? Got a little bit of momentum, a little bit of roll. If all of a sudden you can beat the Cowboys, now you pull yourself even with the Bears at 5-5. In the last 6 weeks of the season, you expect your record to be better than the Bears. You're sitting there thinking to yourself, hey, you potentially could get into playoff position. But then you go out and lose this game. It was absolutely a game they could ill afford to lose. Like, it's not the season is over type of loss, but it certainly puts them at a significant disadvantage in handicap. So this was one, they needed to go in there and handle business and beat the Cowboys, and they just flat out failed to do it. In terms of great performances for the week, I'm going to hand out some game balls. I'll go with Deshaun Watson, 380 total yards, 344 of them, I believe, through the air, 3 total touchdowns, helping the Texans beat the Patriots. Derrick Henry had 133 rushing yards and a touchdown, including the game winner in overtime. When he has good games, he has really damn good games, or more so, he seems to be that guy that can come up with those big-time moments when you really, really need him as an offense. In terms of wide receivers, I go with Keenan Allen. He had 16 receptions, 145 yards, and a touchdown. Was Herbert's favorite target on Sunday, helping lead the Chargers past the Jets. When I look at defensive efforts, while certainly they gave up more points than some of the other teams on Sunday, I like the Browns' defense to be able to sit there, force a safety, force a couple of turnovers by Wentz, have a pick six. They were a force on Sunday at strategic and key times. And you look at that Browns team, and all of a sudden now they're feeling like a little more of a balanced unit, a team you got to worry maybe a little bit more about when you think about the playoffs. Now I'm going to talk, it's 2-minute drill time, and just about Joe Burrow. Like, this sucks. Like, this really, really sucks. Because it's just one of those things that happens. It's just one of those things that you can never really truly prepare or plan for. And it's like someday if you look back and Joe Burrow doesn't fully pan out to what maybe folks had for his expectations, and he becomes a bust or he becomes a disappointment, you're going to look at this moment in time and say that's the moment that everything changed. And it's like, on the one hand, you could say, well, the Bengals screwed it up. And I will say, admittedly, like, I understood and completely got why they took Joe Burrow. It was a safe pick. And it was certainly a low bust potential, although I thought the ceiling was lower than a guy like Herbert. When in doubt, sometimes you got to go with the tools. That said, like, how would you really hold the Bengals responsible for something like that happen? How could you ever plan for that type of injury? So I hate sometimes when we use like the bust label. Like, Burrow does end up being a bust. Yeah, he might be a bust, but can you really blame Cincinnati for that? Like, could they really envision that was going to happen? Now you can say maybe if they put a better offensive line in front of them, that could help prevent that, and that could certainly be true. And that again speaks to the larger organizational importance associated with drafting quarterback. drafting that young quarterback in and of itself does not fix all the problems or even most of the problems. It's something that teams taking guys like Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson are going to have to keep in mind. But I really hope that this is just a temporary setback for Joe Burrow, that he will be able to come back at some point in time next year and be able to flash some of the potential that he was showing this year. Because while I don't think he was showing elite potential, he was at least showing that he could be a quality NFL starter, which for the Cincinnati Bengals has to mean something. At least still gives them enough hope for the future. But I hate seeing these young guys go down with injury. Like, it's one thing if he had already played in the league a decade and everything like that. But damn, like, first you have Dak go down in a contract year for all intents and purposes. And now you got Joe Burrow, a little more than halfway through his rookie season, is going down with a gnarly injury, too. Sometimes it's just not fair, is it? Well, here's hoping that Burrow comes back healthy and right, and that it doesn't set back the Bengals franchise too much.